My parents boycotted my college graduation to fund a luxury getaway for my entitled brother for achieving absolutely nothing. Walking into the silent house in my cap and gown felt like stepping onto another planet. It was May 12th, the day I received my civil engineering degree. I had spent 4 years working night shifts at a diner to avoid crippling student loans. My parents had sworn they were treating me to a celebratory dinner at Morton's Steakhouse at 6 p.m. I stood in the hallway, calling out for them. Silence. I walked into the kitchen and saw my mother's iPad glowing on the island. A notification was stuck on the screen from my older brother, Lucas. "Thanks for the first-class upgrade, Mom. The resort is insane." Lucas was 26 and had just been fired from a cell phone kiosk for stealing inventory. My heart hammered against my ribs. I unlocked the iPad. There it was, a $6,500 receipt for a week-long stay at a 5-star spa in Sedona, booked 2 days ago. Right beneath it was an email confirming the cancellation of my Morton's reservation. Propped against the coffee maker was a generic drugstore greeting card. My mother's messy handwriting read, "So proud of your little diploma." Lucas was having a severe mental health crisis over his unfair termination, so we took him away to decompress. There's a frozen pizza in the freezer. Love you. Taped to the inside was a $10 Dunkin' Donuts gift card. $10. The Sedona trip cost over $6 grand. I didn't cry. The absolute disrespect burned away any capacity for tears. I went straight to my bedroom and grabbed my hiking backpack. I loaded it with my laptop, my birth certificate, and the $800 in tip money I kept in a shoebox. Within 45 minutes, my childhood house key was on the kitchen counter, and I was merging onto I-95 South. I drove 6 hours to Atlanta, crashing on my college roommate's couch. I didn't leave a note. 2 years passed. I landed a junior structural engineer position at a top firm, making $85,000 a year. I bought a condo. My parents occasionally left voicemails playing the victims, complaining that I was ruthlessly abandoning them. They never acknowledged Sedona. Then, my grandfather's will was executed. He had left his entire $150,000 estate to me, explicitly writing my parents out because of their terrible financial habits. The day the funds cleared, my phone started ringing off the hook. Lucas had totaled his leased truck while driving on a suspended license, and the victims were suing my parents for $100,000. They were facing imminent bankruptcy. They needed my inheritance. My mother managed to track down my office building and ambushed me in the lobby on a Tuesday morning. She rushed forward with tears in her eyes, holding a stack of legal documents. "We are so sorry for the distance," she sobbed, loud enough for my coworkers to hear. "We need your help. Just sign these to transfer Grandpa's money to us, or we lose the house. Family has to stick together." I didn't flinch. I looked at the bank transfer papers in her trembling hands. I reached into my briefcase and pulled out a single sheet of paper. It was a blown-up, laminated screenshot of her $6,500 Sedona resort receipt and the text mocking my little diploma. I handed it to her. "I used the last of my Dunkin' Donuts gift card yesterday," I said loudly, perfectly calm. "Grandpa's money is going into my retirement fund. You and Lucas can decompress in bankruptcy court." I turned around and swiped my security badge to enter the elevators. She started screaming, but the security guards quickly escorted her out of the revolving doors. The elevator ride up to the 14th floor was the quietest 60 seconds of my life. My heart wasn't racing anymore. It was steady, heavy, and cold. When the doors opened, my boss, Marcus, was standing there with a lukewarm coffee in his hand. He looked at me, then back at the lobby windows downstairs where my mother's silhouette was still visible through the glass, flailing her arms at the security guard. "Everything okay, Elias?" he asked. "He's a good guy, the kind of engineer who cares more about the load-bearing capacity of a beam than the politics of the office, but he's not blind." "Fine," I said, walking past him to my cubicle. "Just some family business that stayed in the past until today." I sat down and tried to focus on the blueprints for a mid-rise project in Buckhead, but the lines on the screen started to blur. The inheritance wasn't just a number in a bank account. To my parents, it was a life raft. To my grandfather, it was a final "I told you so." He had watched them bail Lucas out of 3 failed community college attempts, 2 business ventures involving imported vape pens, and a series of legal scrapes that always seemed to cost exactly what my parents had in their savings. By noon, my phone had 17 missed calls, 5 from my mother, 3 from my father, and 9 from Lucas. I blocked all 3 numbers. Then, a text came through from an unknown contact. "Elias, it's Dad. I'm using a burner because you won't answer. We're at the kitchen table with a lawyer. If you don't sign over at least 80 grand by Friday, they're going to place a lien on the house. Your mother hasn't stopped crying. You're punishing her for one mistake 2 years ago. Is a graduation dinner really worth your parents being homeless? Call me. One mistake. That's what they called it. Not the 20 years of Lucas needs more support because he's sensitive, while I was told to figure it out because I was the responsible one." I didn't reply. Instead, I called the estate attorney, a sharp woman named Sarah who had handled my grandfather's transition. "Sarah, it's Elias. My parents are making moves. My mother showed up at my office with transfer papers already drawn up. How did she even get those? They probably had a local notary draft a demand for settlement." Sarah sighed. "It's not legally binding unless you sign, Elias. But be careful. If they're desperate, they might try to contest the will on the grounds of undue influence or claim your grandfather wasn't of sound mind. He was sharper than both of them combined until the day he died." I snapped. "I know that, but in court, sharp is a matter of documentation. Keep your head down. Don't engage." I stayed late at the office that night, mostly because I didn't want to go back to my condo and find them sitting on my doorstep. I ordered a sandwich, ate it at my desk, and watched the city lights flicker on over Atlanta. I felt a strange sense of mourning, not for the relationship, because that had died in the kitchen with the $10 gift card, but for the peace I thought I'd bought with 2 years of silence. When I finally drove home at 9 p.m., my street was clear. I checked my mailbox. Inside was an overnighted FedEx envelope. No return address, but I knew the handwriting. I took it upstairs, poured a glass of water, and sat on my sofa. Inside wasn't a legal threat. It was a photo, a Polaroid from when I was 6 and Lucas was 8. We were at the beach, and I was holding a plastic shovel. Lucas had his arm around my neck, looking back. It looked more like a chokehold than an embrace, but my mother had written on the back, "Remember when you were brothers? He's drowning, Elias. You're the only one who can swim. Please." I felt a surge of nausea. They weren't just asking for the money anymore. They were trying to rewrite my memory of the last 2 decades. The next morning, I arrived at work to find a bouquet of flowers and a gift basket on my desk. There was a card tucked into the cellophane. My coworker, Sarah from marketing, leaned over the partition. "Ooh, secret admirer?" I opened the card. "We can't wait to see you for dinner tonight, 7 p.m. at the old place. We have so much to catch up on. We've already forgiven you for yesterday. Love, Mom and Dad." They were gaslighting me in real time. They weren't acknowledging the lobby scene, the blocked numbers, or the fact that I hadn't spoken to them in years. They were simply pretending the conflict didn't exist, banking on my lifelong habit of being the easy child who didn't want to cause a scene. At 6:30 p.m., I didn't go to the old place. I went to a local gym and ran on the treadmill until until my lungs burned. But as I was walking to my car in the gym parking lot, a beat-up silver sedan pulled into the spot behind me, blocking me in. The door creaked open. Lucas stepped out. He looked terrible. His face was puffy, his hair was greasy, and he was wearing a t-shirt that looked like it hadn't been washed in a week. He didn't look like a guy who had just spent a week in Sedona. He looked like a guy who was staring down the barrel of a reality he couldn't charm his way out of. "Hey, little brother," he said, leaning against the hood of my car. "Long time no see. Move the car, Lucas," I said, my voice flat. "Can't do that. We need to talk, man to man. Mom and Dad are losing their minds. And honestly, it's kind of a dick move, holding onto Grandpa's cash while they're about to lose the roof over their heads. You totaled a truck while driving on a suspended license, Lucas. You caused a $100,000 liability. This isn't a family problem. This is a you problem." Lucas stepped closer. He didn't look threatening, just pathetic. "I made a mistake, okay? The sun was in my eyes. The guy in the other car was braking for no reason. It's a lawsuit, Elias. People sue for everything these days. But the house, that's where you grew up. You really want to see Mom packing boxes into a U-Haul because you're holding a grudge over a graduation dinner?" "It wasn't a dinner," I said, taking a step toward him. "It was the fact that you stole $6,500 for a spa while I was eating a frozen pizza in my cap and gown. It was the fact that you've spent your whole life being a parasite, and they've spent their whole lives feeding you parts of me to keep you full." Lucas rolled his eyes. Always the martyr. "Look, I'll make you a deal. Give them the $100,000 for the settlement. Keep the 50. I won't even touch it. I'll go get a job. A real one this time." "You couldn't keep a job at a kiosk, Lucas. You're a thief. Get out of my way." "No," he said, his voice sharpening. "I'm not moving until you agree to meet them. They're waiting at the restaurant. They've been there for an hour. Go there. Talk to them. And if you still want to be a cold-hearted prick after that, fine. But give them the chance to apologize." I looked at him, then at the car blocking me. I could call the police, but the thought of the paperwork and the scene made my head ache. Or I could go to the restaurant, say my piece one last time in a public place where they couldn't scream, and end this once and for all. "Fine," I said. "I'll go, but you stay here. If I see you at that table, I'm walking out before I even sit down." I drove to the restaurant, a mid-range Italian place we used to go to for birthdays. I saw my parents through the window. They looked older. My father's hair was almost entirely white now, and my mother was clutching her purse like a shield. I walked in, and the hostess led me to their table. My mother stood up to hug me, but I sat down before she could reach me. "Sit down," I said. My father cleared his throat. "Elias, thank you for coming. We know things have been tense." "Tense isn't the word," I said. "I've been dead to you for 2 years. Now you need a check, and suddenly I'm resurrected. Let's skip the small talk. You want the $150,000. We need to settle the lawsuit," my father said, leaning forward. "The interest is piling up. The lawyers for the other family are being very aggressive. They're threatening to garnish our wages, Elias. We're 58 years old. We can't start over. Where's the $6,500 you spent on Sedona?" I asked. My mother flinched. "Elias, please." Lucas was in a dark place. He was talking about whatever he needed to talk about to get a vacation," I interrupted. "He's been playing you since he was 12, and you let him. You let him do it with my money, my time, and my milestones. You canceled my graduation dinner to reward him for getting fired for theft. We were going to make it up to you," my mother cried, her voice rising. "When? It's been 730 days. When was the makeup happening? Was it the $10 gift card? Or the flowers you sent to my office today to embarrass me in front of my boss?" My father sighed, a long, weary sound. "We made a bad call. We admit it. But this is about survival now. If you don't help us, we lose everything. We'll be living in an apartment in a bad part of town, or worse. Is that what you want? To see your parents suffer for the rest of their lives because of 1 week in Sedona?" I looked at them, and for a second, I felt that old familiar tug of guilt, the good son instinct that had been drilled into me. But then, I looked at my mother's hands. She was wearing a new gold watch. It looked expensive. "Where'd you get the watch, Mom?" I asked quietly. She pulled her sleeve down, her face turning a deep shade of red. It was a gift from your father for our anniversary last month." "An anniversary gift," I nodded. "While you're facing bankruptcy, while you're being sued for 6 figures, you're still spending money you don't have on things you don't need, and you're asking me to hand over my grandfather's legacy to fund more of it. It's not like that," my father hissed. "That was bought on a credit card. It's part of the debt we're trying to manage." "You're not managing debt," I said, standing up. "You're managing me, or you're trying to." "Elias, wait." My mother grabbed my wrist. Her grip was surprisingly strong. "There's something else. We didn't want to tell you because we didn't want to pressure you, but your father's company is doing layoffs. He's on the list. If we lose the house, we don't have a backup. We have nothing." I looked at my father. He wouldn't meet my eyes. He just stared at the breadsticks in the center of the table. "The house is already gone," I said, realization hitting me. "You've already taken out a second mortgage, haven't you, to pay for Lucas's previous issues?" The silence that followed was my answer. "How much?" I asked. "How much is the total debt?" My father mumbled something into his chest. "Speak up, Dad." 300,000, he said, finally looking up. His eyes were wet. "Between the lawsuit, the mortgage, and the credit cards. We're drowning, Elias. Even the 150 won't fix it all, but it'll keep the creditors at bay for a year. It'll buy us time to figure things out. A year. They wanted me to blow my entire inheritance money my grandfather had saved through 40 years of working in a local mill to buy them 12 months of the same lifestyle that had ruined them. I'm not giving you the money," I said. My mother let go of my wrist like I was made of hot lead. You monster. After everything we did for you, we raised you, we fed you. You did the bare minimum of parenting for one child and the absolute maximum of enabling for the other." I said. "I'm done. Don't call me. Don't come to my office. If I see any of you near my condo, I'm getting a restraining order. And Mom, sell the watch. It might cover a month of rent in that bad part of town you're so afraid of." I walked out of the restaurant. I expected to feel a rush of triumph, but I just felt tired. I got into my car and sat there for a long time, watching the rain start to smear the windshield. My phone buzzed. A new text from the unknown number. "If you don't help, I'm going to the press. Local engineer leaves parents homeless while sitting on inheritance." How do you think your top firm will feel about that kind of publicity? Think about it, Elias. We're gonna get that money one way or another. It wasn't my father. The phrasing was too aggressive, too desperate. It was Lucas. He was finally dropping the sensitive soul act and moving into open extortion. I didn't delete the text. I screenshotted it and sent it to Sarah, the estate attorney. "New development," I wrote. "They're threatening to sabotage my career now." Her reply came back 5 minutes later. "Do not respond. I'm calling a colleague who specializes in harassment. We need to document everything. Also, Elias, check your credit score tonight. If they have your social security number, they might be getting desperate enough to try other avenues." I felt a cold pit form in my stomach. My birth certificate. I had taken it when I left, but they knew everything about me. They had my childhood records. They had my history. I drove home, my mind racing. When I pulled into my complex, I didn't see the silver sedan, but I saw a man standing by the entrance to the mailroom. He was wearing a suit, looking out of place in the humid Georgia evening. As I walked toward the door, he stepped into my path. "Elias Vance?" he asked. "Who's asking?" "I'm a process server," he said, handing me a thick manila envelope. "You've been been served. Your parents are contesting the will of Arthur Vance. They're claiming your grandfather was suffering from early onset dementia when the final codicil was signed. I looked at the envelope. It felt heavy, like a stone. They're really doing this, I whispered. Have a nice night, the man said, turning to walk away. I went up to my condo, locked the door, and leaned against it. The $150,000 wasn't a gift anymore. It was a target. And my parents, the people who had forgotten my graduation, were suddenly very, very good at remembering how to hurt me. I opened the envelope. Inside were the court dates and a list of evidence their lawyer intended to present. Among the papers was a copy of a medical report from 3 years ago, a minor checkup, where my grandfather had mentioned feeling foggy after a bout with the flu. They were twisting a week of the flu into a narrative of permanent cognitive decline. But there was something else at the bottom of the stack. A handwritten note, not from a lawyer, but from my mother. It doesn't have to be like this. Just give us half, $75,000, and we drop the suit. We can be a family again. We can have Christmas at the house. Think about it, Elias. Don't let a lawyer take all of it in fees. Just be our son again. The price of her love was exactly $75,000. I sat down at my kitchen table and pulled out my laptop. I didn't look at the legal papers. I looked at my bank account. The money was there, sitting in a high-yield savings account. I could end this right now. I could send the wire, sign the release, and they would disappear. I could have my peace back. But then I thought about my grandfather. I thought about him sitting in his small house, meticulously tracking his expenses, making sure he had enough to leave something behind for the one person in his family who hadn't treated him like an ATM. He had known they would do this. That's why he'd been so explicit in the will. I picked up the phone and called Sarah. They served me, I said, and they offered a settlement, $75,000 to walk away. Don't take it, Sarah said immediately. If you pay them once, you're a permanent source of income. They'll find a reason to come back for the other 75 in 6 months. I know, I said, but Sarah, they're going after my job. They're going after my reputation. I'm a junior engineer. If my name gets dragged through a messy public fraud case, I'm done before I even start. Then we don't let it be messy, she said. We go on the offensive. You said your brother was fired for theft, right? And your parents are facing bankruptcy? We need to show the court exactly why they're doing this. This isn't about your grandfather's mind. It's about their pockets. I hung up and looked at the $10 Dunkin' Donuts gift card, which I still kept in my wallet as a reminder. It was worn at the edges, the plastic peeling. I realized then that they weren't just fighting for the money. They were fighting to prove they were right, that Lucas was the one worth saving, and I was just the resource meant to save him. The next morning, I didn't go to work. I drove to my grandfather's old house. It was 3 hours away, a small place in a town that had seen better days. The new owners were a young couple who had bought it for a song. I knocked on the door. The woman who answered looked tired, a toddler clinging to her leg. I'm sorry to bother you, I said. My name is Elias. My grandfather used to live here. I was wondering, when you bought the place, did you find any of his old things? In the attic or the basement? The realtor said most of it was cleared out, but he was a bit of a hoarder when it came to paperwork. She looked at me for a long moment, then softened. The old man? Mr. Vance? Yeah, he left a whole trunk in the garage. We've been meaning to call someone, but with the baby. Come on back. She led me to the garage. In the corner, under a dusty tarp, was my grandfather's heavy green footlocker. My heart hammered. This was his office. I opened it. It was filled with ledgers, dozens of them. He had recorded every penny he ever spent and every penny he ever gave away. I started flipping through the most recent ones, 2022, 2023, and then I found it. An entry from April, just weeks before my graduation. Loaned $2,000 to son for Lucas's legal fees. Told him this is the last of it. He screamed at me, called me a senile old fool. I recorded the whole thing on my phone just in case. File saved as the truth on the USB in the hidden compartment. I felt a chill run down my spine. I searched the trunk, my fingers scrambling over old checkbooks and tax returns. In the very bottom, tucked under the lining, was a small silver USB drive. I plugged it into my laptop right there in the garage. There was one folder. Inside were 10 audio files. I clicked the first one. You don't understand, Dad. My father's voice exploded through the speakers. If we don't pay this off, Lucas goes to jail. You have the money. What are you saving it for? Elias? Elias is fine. He's a machine. He doesn't need help. Give us the damn money or I swear to God, I'll have you declared incompetent. My grandfather's voice came through, calm and steady. I'm not incompetent, David. I'm just tired of watching you throw my hard work into a furnace. I'm leaving everything to the boy who actually respects it. And I'm recording this so you can't lie about me later. I closed the laptop. My hands were shaking. It wasn't just proof of my grandfather's mental state. It was proof of their intent. It was proof of the extortion they had been practicing for years. I thanked the woman, left my contact info, and walked back to my car. I had the truth. But as I pulled out of the driveway, I noticed a black SUV parked down the street. As soon as I moved, it pulled out behind me. I didn't think much of it until I hit the highway and realized it was staying exactly 3 car lengths behind me. When I switched lanes, it switched lanes. When I slowed down, it slowed down. My phone rang. Private caller. I answered. You found something in that house, didn't you, Elias? It was my father. His voice sounded different. Not crying, not pleading, just cold. How do you know I was there? I asked, my grip tightening on the steering wheel. We still have the GPS on the old family account, Elias. You never took your car off it. We've been watching you move all day. Now, why don't you pull over? Let's have a real family talk. No lawyers, no lobby security, just us. I'm not pulling over, Dad. Elias, don't be difficult. We know about the trunk. We know what he kept. If you think those recordings are going to help you, you're wrong. They'll just make us look desperate, and desperate people get sympathy from juries. Pull over. Let's settle this $75,000 deal right now, and I'll tell the guy behind you to head home. The guy behind me. They had hired someone. Not a hitman. This wasn't a movie, but a private investigator, or maybe just one of Lucas's associates. Someone to intimidate me. I'm going to the police station, Dad, I said, my voice remarkably steady. For what? Driving behind you? That's not a crime, but I wonder what your firm would think if a video surfaced of you assaulting your brother in a gym parking lot? Lucas is very good at making things look a certain way, Elias. He's got the bruises to prove you hit him yesterday. The nausea was back, stronger than ever. They had planned this. The gym encounter wasn't just a talk, it was a setup. I have the recordings, Dad. All of them, including the ones where you threatened Grandpa. The line went silent for a long time. Then I guess we have a lot to talk about, my father said and hung up. The black SUV sped up, pulling into the lane next to me. The window rolled down. It wasn't a stranger. It was Lucas. He was driving a car I didn't recognize, holding a phone up to the window, filming me. He grinned, a jagged, ugly expression, and jerked the steering wheel toward me, just enough to make my tires screech as I swerved toward the shoulder. He wasn't trying to kill me. He was trying to rattle me. He wanted me to panic. He wanted me to hit something. I didn't. I straightened the car, slowed down to exactly the speed limit, and dialed Sarah. Sarah, I said, I'm on I-85. Lucas is trying to run me off the road while filming it, and I have the evidence we need to bury them. Stay on the phone, she said. I'm calling the highway patrol. Don't look at him, Elias. Just keep driving. But as the blue lights appeared in the distance, I realized this wasn't the end. This was just the beginning of a very long, very public war. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't the easy child. I was the one with the power, and they were beginning to realize just how dangerous a quiet son can be when he finally stops caring about being loved. I didn't go to the police. I didn't go to the highway patrol. I did exactly what my grandfather would have done. I stayed the course. I kept my speed at exactly 65 miles per hour, my eyes locked on the road ahead, ignoring the black SUV that was now swerving playfully into my lane just to see if I'd flinch. I didn't. When I finally reached my condo complex, I saw my father standing by the gate. He wasn't in a suit. He was wearing an old windbreaker and khakis, looking like any other retiree, except for the way his jaw was set. I pulled into my spot, and Lucas parked the SUV diagonally behind me, effectively pinning my car in. I got out. I didn't run. I didn't shout. I just held my phone in my hand, recording. "Get that out of my face, Elias," Lucas said, jumping out of the driver's seat. He looked energized, like the adrenaline of the chase had finally given him a purpose. "You think you're so smart with your little degree and your briefcase. You're just a coward who hides behind lawyers." "I'm hiding behind the truth, Lucas," I said. "There's a difference." My father walked over, placing a hand on Lucas's shoulder to steady him. It was a gesture of solidarity that made my stomach turn. "Elias, enough. We've seen the ledger. We know what's in the trunk. But you need to understand something about your grandfather. He was a bitter man at the end. He didn't understand the pressures of the modern world. He didn't understand what it takes to keep a family together. He understood exactly what it took," I countered. "It took not lying to him. It took not threatening to lock him away because he wouldn't fund your lifestyle. Do you have any idea how much that broke him? Hearing his own son call him senile over a couple $1,000s? It was a heat of the moment thing." My father dismissed it with a wave of his hand. "Families say things. You're saying things right now you'll regret. Now, here is how this is going to go. You're going to give us the USB drive. In exchange, we drop the contest to the will. We'll take the house debt, we'll figure out the lawsuit, and we'll leave you alone. No more office visits, no more calls." "And the $75,000? I asked. "We still need that." My mother's voice came from the shadows of the parking garage. She had been waiting by the elevator. She walked into the light, her eyes red-rimmed. "Elias, the bank gave us 48 hours. If we don't show them a proof of funds, the foreclosure starts. Do you want that on your conscience, knowing you're the reason your mother is on the street? You put yourselves on the street when you took out a second mortgage for a kid who steals cell phones," I said. Lucas lunged forward, but my father held him back. "Stop it, both of you!" He looked at me, his expression shifting from cold to desperate. "Elias, please, just 75. Keep the rest. Buy your peace. If this goes to court, even with those tapes, it will take years. The lawyers will eat half of it anyway. Why give it to them when you can give it to us?" I looked at the three of them. For a split second, I saw them for what they really were, a sinking ship, all of them clinging to each other and trying to pull me down to serve as a buoy. "I'm not giving you a cent," I said, my voice barely a whisper, "and I'm not giving you the drive. I've already uploaded the files to a secure cloud server. My lawyer has the link. If anything happens to me, or if you ever contact my employer again, those recordings go to the local news and the police. There's enough in there to talk about elder abuse, Dad. You know it and I know it." My mother let out a small, strangled sob. My father just looked at me, his face turning a gray, ashen color. He realized the easy son was gone. "Move the car, Lucas," I said. Lucas looked at our father, waiting for a signal. My father just nodded slowly, his shoulders slumped. Lucas spat on the ground near my shoe, got back into the SUV, and roared out of the garage. I went up to my condo and sat in the dark for 3 hours. I didn't turn on the lights. I didn't check my phone. I just listened to the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic. I felt a strange, hollow victory. I had kept the money. I had kept my dignity. But as I sat there, I realized that the house I grew up in, the place where I'd hidden my tip money in a shoebox and dreamed of being an engineer, was really and truly gone. The next morning, I was back at my desk by 7:30 a.m. I worked through lunch, calculating the load requirements for a parking deck. It was grounding. Numbers don't lie. Gravity doesn't have an agenda. At 2 p.m., my desk phone rang. It was the receptionist. "Elias, there's a woman here to see you. She says her name is Sarah. She says she's your attorney." I walked out to the lobby, expecting more bad news. Sarah was standing there, looking remarkably calm. She held a manila folder in her hand. "They withdrew the contest," she said, without preamble. 10 minutes ago. Their lawyer called me and said his clients are no longer interested in pursuing the matter." "Just like that?" I asked. "Just like that. I suspect your talk in the garage did the trick. But Elias, there's something you need to see." Part of the withdrawal included a disclosure of their current financial status. It was part of a settlement offer they tried to float at the last second. She opened the folder and handed me a sheet of paper. It was a list of assets and liabilities. "They didn't just have a second mortgage," Sarah said quietly. "They had a third, and 3 personal loans. And Lucas, he didn't just total a truck. He was driving a vehicle that was registered to a shell company your father set up to hide assets from his own employer." I stared at the numbers. They weren't just drowning. They had tied weights to their ankles and jumped into the middle of the ocean. The total debt wasn't $300,000. It was closer to $500,000. My grandfather's $150,000 wouldn't have kept the creditors at bay for a year. It wouldn't have even covered the back interest. They were never going to save the house, I realized. They just wanted the cash to run. "Probably," Sarah agreed. "But there's one more thing. Your father's company found out about the shell company this morning. He wasn't laid off, Elias. He was fired for cause. Embezzlement is being discussed." I sat down on one of the lobby's plush chairs. The weight of it all finally hit me. The Sedona trip, the mental health crisis, the $10 gift card. It was all the desperate thrashing of people who knew the end was coming and wanted one last taste of luxury before the lights went out. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now? You move on," Sarah said. "The money is yours. The legal threat is gone. But Elias, they're going to lose everything. In about 30 days, that house is going to auction. They'll have nowhere to go." I thanked her and went back to my desk. I tried to focus on the parking deck, but all I could see was my mother's messy handwriting on that drugstore card. "So proud of your little diploma." 2 weeks later, I received a package at my office. No return address. Inside was a single key on a piece of string and a small handwritten note on a scrap of lined paper. "We're leaving tonight. The bank changed the locks on the front door, but the back gate still works if you jiggle it. Your grandfather's old watch is in the crawl space behind the water heater. We couldn't bring ourselves to sell it. It's yours. Don't look for us." Mom, I drove to my childhood home that evening. The for sale sign was already hammered into the lawn, with a foreclosure sticker slapped across the top in bright red. The grass was overgrown, and the windows looked like blind eyes. I went to the back gate, jiggled the latch just like she said, and walked into the yard. It was quiet. No screaming, no demands, no Lucas complaining about his unfair life. Just the sound of the wind through the trees. I didn't go inside. I couldn't bring myself to walk through those rooms knowing they were empty. I just stood there for a long time, looking at the house that had been built on a foundation of secrets and bad checks. I didn't go for the watch. I didn't need it. I had my diploma, my condo, and a future that didn't involve bailing out people who wouldn't even buy me a steak dinner. As I walked back to my car, my phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize. "We're at a motel in Florida. Lucas got a job job washing dishes. It's not much, but it's a start. I'm sorry, Elias. I'm so sorry. I didn't reply. I didn't block the number either. I just put the phone in my pocket and started the engine. I had $150,000 in the bank, but as I drove away from the darkened house, the only thing that felt real was the quiet. I was 24 years old, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't responsible for anyone but myself. It was the most expensive gift my grandfather ever gave me. I pulled onto the highway, heading back toward the city. The lights of Atlanta were bright on the horizon, a sharp, clean grid of possibilities. I thought about the bridge I was helping design, the one that would stand for 100 years if the math was right. I realized then that you can't build anything on a lie. You have to clear the site down to the bedrock, no matter how much it hurts to tear the old structure down. I was halfway home when I passed a Dunkin' Donuts. I pulled into the drive-thru, ordered a black coffee, and when I got to the window, I handed the girl the $10 gift card. There's about 80 cents left on this, I told her. Keep the change. She looked at me like I was crazy, but I just smiled and drove into the night. I didn't answer. I just sat in my car in the Dunkin' parking lot, watching the steam rise from the black coffee. My mother's apology felt like a late fee on a debt that had already been sent to collections. It was a gesture made out of exhaustion, not evolution. She wasn't sorry she had hurt me. She was sorry the house was gone and the motel room smelled like stale cigarettes and cheap disinfectant. The drive back to my condo was different this time. The city didn't look like a playground of possibilities anymore. It looked like a series of structural calculations. I found myself looking at the overpasses and the high-rises, thinking about the sheer amount of tension holding everything together. It's funny how once you understand how things are built, you can't stop seeing how they might fail. I got home and found a thick envelope tucked under my door. It wasn't from a process server or a lawyer. It was from the bank, the one where I held my grandfather's inheritance. I opened it, expecting a routine statement. Instead, it was a notification of a failed login attempt from 3 different IP addresses, all within the last 24 hours. 2 were from Florida. 1 was from a local library 3 blocks from my office. My stomach dropped. They weren't just gone. They were still digging. Lucas knew my middle name, my birthday, the name of my first pet. He knew the things that banks use to verify your identity when you've forgotten your password. I pulled up my laptop and changed every security question to something they couldn't possibly guess. For what was your high school mascot? I typed times $10 gift card. For mother's maiden name? I typed times Sedona Spa. I didn't sleep much that night. At 3 a.m., my phone lit up with a notification from a social media account I hadn't checked in months. It was a tag and a post from a cousin I barely talked to. It was a photo of Lucas. He was sitting on a plastic chair outside a motel room, a beer in his hand, grinning like he'd just won the lottery. The caption read, "Finally free from the toxic drama back home. New beginnings in the Sunshine State. Watch out, world. The Vance brothers are coming for it all." He was already rebranding. The bankruptcy, the lawsuit, the embezzlement in his head. It was all just toxic drama that had happened times to times him. And he was still using the Vance brothers plural, as if my success was a joint venture. He was still a shareholder in. The next Monday, I walked into the office and was immediately called into Marcus's glass-walled corner room. He wasn't holding a coffee this time. He was looking at a printout of an email. "Elias, take a seat," he said. He looked uncomfortable, the way engineers do when they have to deal with human variables. "We received a communication this morning. It was sent to the general HR inbox and CC'd to 3 of our senior partners." He slid the paper across the desk. It was an anonymous tip, written in the kind of frantic, run-on sentences that screamed disgruntled family member. "You should check the background of your new hire, Elias Vance. He is currently being investigated for estate fraud and elder financial abuse. He stole $150,000 from a dying man and is leaving his elderly parents to starve while he plays big-shot engineer. Is this the kind of person you want representing your firm on city contracts?" The air in the room felt thin. "I know this is personal," Marcus said, his voice quiet. "And I know what I saw in the lobby a few weeks ago, but the partners are spooked. We deal with city government. Reputation is everything. If there's a formal investigation into estate fraud, we have a problem." "There is no investigation, Marcus," I said, my voice shaking with a mix of rage and humiliation. "They contested the will and withdrew the contest 10 days ago because I have proof they were the ones committing elder abuse. This is a smear campaign because I wouldn't give them the money to pay for my brother's crimes." "I believe you," Marcus said, "and I think he actually did. But the partners don't know you. They know the email. I need you to give HR everything. The withdrawal papers, the recordings you mentioned, anything that proves this is a fabrication. Until then, they're putting you on paid administrative leave, effective immediately." "Administrative leave?" I repeated. "I'm in the middle of the Buckhead project. The load calcs are due Friday. Someone else will handle them," Marcus said, not looking me in the eye. "Just get the paperwork to HR by the end of the day. And Elias, stay off social media. Don't engage with them. If they're doing this, they're looking for a reaction." I walked back to my cubicle to grab my backpack. The office, which had felt like my fortress for 2 years, suddenly felt like a crime scene. I could see Sarah from marketing looking at me over her monitor, her expression a mix of pity and curiosity. I didn't say goodbye. I just walked out. I spent the afternoon in Sarah, the lawyer's office. She looked at the email and sighed. "It's a classic move," she said. "If they can't have the money, they'll try to make sure you can't enjoy it. It's scorched earth. They want you as desperate as they are. Can we sue for defamation?" I asked. "We can, but they have no assets. You'd be spending $10,000 in legal fees to get a judgment against people who are currently living in a motel. It's like suing a stone for being hard. What we times do is file for a permanent injunction and a gag order. We show the court the withdrawal of the contest and the subsequent harassment. We make it legally dangerous for them to speak your name to a third party." "Do it," I said. "Whatever it costs, do it." I went home and sat on my balcony. The sun was setting, turning the Atlanta skyline a bruised purple. I thought about Lucas washing dishes in Florida. I pictured him in the back of some greasy kitchen, plotting his next move between loads of silverware. He was probably convinced he was the hero of this story, the misunderstood brother fighting against the cold, heartless genius who abandoned his family. My phone rang. It was an unrecognized Florida number. I didn't answer. A minute later, a voicemail transcript popped up. It was my father. He sounded drunk. "You think you're better than us, don't you? Sitting in your fancy condo while your mother cries herself to sleep on a mattress that smells like mold? You ruined us, Elias. You told the firm about the shell company. You whispered in the wrong ears. Now I'm blacklisted from every construction firm in the Southeast. I hope that money keeps you warm at night, because you've got no one left. No one." I listened to it twice. I didn't tell his company about the shell company. Sarah had said they found out on their own, likely during a routine audit triggered by the lawsuit. But in my father's mind, I was the architect of his downfall. It was easier than looking in the mirror. The next morning, I woke up to a notification that someone had tried to use my credit card at a gas station in Valdosta, Georgia. Valdosta is on the way from Florida back to Atlanta. They were coming back. I didn't panic. I went to the bank, closed my accounts, and moved the money to a different institution, entirely one that required a physical token for every transaction. Then I called the security desk desk at my condo. This is Elias Vance in 402, I said. I need to update my visitor list. Under no circumstances is anyone with the last name Vance allowed past the gate. Not for a delivery, not for an emergency. If they show up, call the police immediately. Everything okay, Mr. Vance? The guard asked. No, I said, but it's going to be. I spent the next 3 days in a weird kind of limbo. I sent all the documents to HR, but I didn't hear back. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart spiked. I stopped going to the gym. I stopped ordering delivery. I became a ghost in my own life, waiting for the other shoe to drop. It dropped on Thursday night. I was watching a movie when a loud, rhythmic thudding started at my front door. It wasn't a knock. It was a kick. I looked at my doorbell camera. It was Lucas. He was sweating, his face flushed, wearing a dirty t-shirt and jeans. He looked like he'd been driving for 10 hours straight. Behind him, leaning against the hallway wall, was my father. He looked like he could barely stand. Open the door, Elias! Lucas screamed. I know you're in there! Open the damn door! I picked up my phone and dialed the security desk. They're at my door, I said, my voice remarkably cold. Unit 402, call the police. Now. We're on it, Mr. Vance. We saw them tailgating a delivery truck through the gate. We're sending the shift lead up. I walked to the door, but I didn't open it. I looked through the peephole. Lucas was leaning his forehead against the wood, panting. Just give us the 75, he whispered, loud enough for me to hear. That's all we need. Dad's sick, Elias. Like, actually sick. He needs a doctor and we don't have insurance. Just give us the money and we'll disappear for real. I'll sign whatever you want, please. I looked at my father. He was slumped against the wall, clutching his chest. He looked gray. For a second, a tiny, buried part of me wanted to believe him. I wanted to think that maybe, under all the lies and the theft, there was a genuine emergency. But then I saw his hand. He was holding a cigarette, and as he adjusted his grip, I saw the gold watch on his wrist, the one my mother said she'd left in the crawl space, the one she said they couldn't bring themselves to sell. They hadn't left it. They hadn't apologized. They had just used the watch as bait to see if I'd come back to the house so they could corner me. The police are on their way, I said through the door. Lucas froze. He looked at the peephole, his eyes wide and bloodshot. You're joking. You're calling the cops on your own family? You aren't my family, I said. You're a liability. And the watch looks great on Dad, by the way. Glad you found it in the crawl space. My father's head snapped up. He looked at the watch, then at the door, a flash of pure, unadulterated hatred crossing his face. He didn't look sick anymore. He looked caught. You little prick, he yelled, his voice suddenly strong. I should have left you in that diner. I should have let you rot in those student loans. You did, I reminded him, and I did fine. Now move away from the door before they add trespassing to your list of problems. The elevator at the end of the hall dinged. 2 security guards and 2 police officers stepped out. I watched through the camera as Lucas tried to play it cool, putting his hands up and smiling that oily salesman smile. Officers, hey, we're just having a family dispute. My brother here has some of our property. He has a restraining order on file, the security guard interrupted, holding up a tablet. And he explicitly told us you weren't allowed on the premises. You bypassed a secure gate. The police didn't argue. They didn't ask for our side of the story. They saw a frantic, disheveled man screaming at a locked door in a high-end condo building. They handcuffed Lucas first. He started crying real, ugly, snot-filled sobs, blaming my father, blaming the car, blaming me. My father didn't say a word. He just let them lead him away, his eyes fixed on the floor. I didn't come out. I stayed behind the locked door until the hallway was silent. The next morning, I got an email from HR. The partners had reviewed the documents and the recordings. They were satisfied that the anonymous tip was a malicious attempt to harm my reputation. My leave was over. I was expected back in the office on Monday, but I didn't feel relieved. I felt like I was standing in the middle of a bridge that was structurally sound but built over a canyon of nothingness. I checked the news for Valdosta. Nothing. I checked the Florida motel's website. They had a no-show policy. My mother called me an hour later from a payphone. They're in jail, Elias, she said. She wasn't crying anymore. Her voice was flat. Dead. The bail is $5,000 each. I don't have it. If they stay in there, Lucas will lose his mind. And your father, he can't handle a cell. Then I guess they'll have plenty of time to decompress, I said. Is this who you are now? She asked. Is this what that degree did to you? Turned you into a statue? No, I said. It turned me into an engineer, and I've spent the last few weeks looking at the blueprints of this family. The foundation is cracked, Mom. It's been cracked since before I was born. I'm just the first person who stopped trying to patch it with duct tape and lies. I hung up. I didn't go to the jail. I didn't pay the bail. I went to the grocery store and bought a frozen pizza. I took it home, cooked it, and ate it on my balcony. It tasted exactly like the one I'd eaten on my graduation night. Cold, salty, and entirely my own. As I sat there, I realized that the $150,000 wasn't just sitting in a bank. It was the price of my silence. It was the wall I had built around my life. And for the first time, looking out at the city, I didn't feel like I was hiding. I felt like I was finally, truly, moved in. The pizza was tasteless, like cardboard and salt, but I finished every bite. I didn't want to leave a single scrap for them to find if they ever came back. I sat there until the city noise faded into that 4 a.m. lull where even the sirens sound tired. My phone didn't ring again that night. I woke up on Saturday and went through my routine with a surgical kind of precision. I cleaned the condo. I filed my taxes early. I checked the balance of Grandpa's account, $150,034.12. The interest was already ticking up. It was a strange feeling, having the very thing that had dismantled my family sitting quietly in a digital vault, waiting for me to decide what it was actually for. On Sunday, I drove back to the diner where I used to work the night shifts. It was under new management, but some of the same girls were still on the floor. I sat at a corner booth and ordered the same breakfast I used to eat when I was too tired to see straight. I realized then that the $10 gift card hadn't been the insult, it was the $6,500 that was the insult. The gift card was just the receipt for what they thought I was worth. I spent the afternoon at a local park, watching families push strollers and kids kick soccer balls. I looked for myself in those families. I looked for a version of Lucas that wasn't broken. I couldn't find him. I realized then that some people aren't built with a foundation. They're built like temporary scaffolding, designed to lean on whatever is closest until the whole thing inevitably tips over. On Monday, I walked back into the office. The lobby was quiet. No screaming, no legal documents, no security guards wrestling my mother through the doors. Marcus gave me a nod as I passed his office. It wasn't a welcome back nod. It was the look an engineer gives a bridge after it survived a Category 5 hurricane. You're glad it's standing, but you're still going to check for stress fractures every single day. I spent the next few months working 80-hour weeks. I took on the hardest projects, the ones with the most complex structural requirements. I wanted to build things that couldn't be argued with, things that were objectively, undeniably solid. I never heard from them again. No more motel calls, no more anonymous emails. Sarah told me they'd likely taken a plea deal on the trespassing and harassment charges, probation, and a stern warning to stay out of the state of Georgia. As for the embezzlement, that was out of my hands. My father was a ghost in the industry now, a cautionary tale whispered in break rooms. A year later, on May 12th, the anniversary of my little diploma, I went back to Morton's steakhouse. I went alone. I wore my best suit, the one I'd bought with my first real bonus. I sat at a table for two and ordered the most expensive ribeye on the menu. When the waiter brought the check, I looked at the total. With the tip, it came to $180. I thought about the $10 gift card. I thought about the frozen pizza. I thought about the $6,500 Sedona receipt. I pulled out my wallet and paid in cash. As I walked out into the warm Atlanta night, I realized I didn't feel the burn anymore. The disrespect hadn't disappeared, but it had finally cooled into something else. It had become the bedrock. I drove home to my condo, the one I'd bought with my own salary, and looked out at the city I was helping to build. I wasn't the easy son. I wasn't the responsible one. I was just Elias, and for the first time in my life, that was more than enough. My grandfather's money stayed in the retirement fund, untouched, a silent witness to a man who knew exactly who I was before I even knew it myself. I wasn't just swimming. I was the one who built the pool.